Hello everyone, I hope you're having a nice week. Today I'd like to make a video about the Australian artist, dancer and creative Vali Myers. On Thursday, which is tomorrow for me now, we are approaching the full moon in Scorpio, and I thought it would be a great time to share an inspiration of mine and look at her artwork and her life. The full moon in Scorpio is traditionally associated with transformation, with the mysteries of life, death and rebirth, and with the archetype of the dark goddess. Also associated with the idea of shedding skin, the idea of personal transformation and vanishing negativity, and I thought that these themes all tied in very nicely with the art and life of Vali Myers. I was also inspired by an amazing workshop that Angeliska or Sister Temperance Tarot recently held with Minx and Muse, an online workshop which was about the dark goddess, different dark goddesses, and about the idea in general, which I found very inspiring. So I would like to link that below as well if you're interested in learning more about those topics. As I feel that Vali Myers truly embodies the spirit of the full moon in Scorpio, I'd like to share some information first about her life, and then I'll be sharing some of her art with you. Vali Myers was born on 2nd of August in 1930 in Sydney, Australia. Then, with her family, she ended up moving to Melbourne, and she has said in several interviews that can be found on YouTube that she really didn't enjoy school. She didn't enjoy reading, writing and rote learning that was the norm back then, still is today I suppose. And she described herself as perhaps autistic, and she really didn't feel that she fit in school. So she said when she was 14, she decided to leave school and work in a factory near Melbourne where she was living with her family. And by earning money in the factory, which in interviews she said paid well, she was able to pay for her dance education, and she studied dance in Melbourne in Australia. I feel like Vali's childhood resonates with me, a lot of her experiences and how she described growing up, so I think that's really interesting. Then, before she was 20, I believe she was 19 at the time, she moved to Paris in France, and this was in the post-war era, a very different and interesting time in Paris. And she'd originally moved there to be a dancer, but as she said in various interviews, in the post-war period there wasn't very much work. So she ended up sleeping on the streets for a lot of time and doing various odd jobs. But this actually led her to become a muse for many artists in Paris at the time, and you can find many beautiful photographs of her back then. She was featured in a few photo documentaries, and she became quite well known in the sort of artistic scene that can be described as the demi-monde back in Paris in those days. And then from Paris, after, in her own words, succumbing to an opium addiction, she moved with her husband at the time to the village of Positano in Italy, a small village, and there she found a very lush green valley, and she ended up, over decades of hard work, creating an animal sanctuary there. During her time in Italy, she would look after many dogs and other animals in the sanctuary. She would also fight to keep that area of greenery protected, and she would also work on her art. She also spent time living in the famous Chelsea Hotel in New York in America, where a lot of different artists lived throughout the 70s, and it became seen as a hub of alternative culture back then. Interestingly, in the Chelsea Hotel, Vali tattooed the singer Patti Smith she tattooed a small lightning bolt on her knee, as Patti Smith, who's a famous musician, was very inspired by Vali Myers herself. Decades and decades, Vali lived in Positano and she worked with the animals there, she developed her art, and her longtime partner who also lived there, Gianni Menichetti, who's also an artist, also spent a lot of time there with her, and he also made that place his home. In the early 1990s, after suffering from seizures, Vali returned to Australia, where she would live most of the time and then just spend time every now and then back in Positano. She had her artwork exhibited in Sydney, and I think in that time when she moved back to Australia, the country started to realise what a national treasure she is. Sadly, on the 12th of February 2003, Vali Myers passed away from cancer in Melbourne. Vali Myers left an amazing art legacy, decades of work behind her, and so I'd like to speak a little bit about her art. Vali started drawing when she was in Paris. I'm not sure if she drew before that, but that's when the first of her drawings can be found, pictures of them on the internet. And her drawing style had a darkness to it, very beautiful and almost surreal images, usually in black and white. Then, over the years, her work only increased in detail and she started adding rich and vibrant colours to her pieces. Her art would often take years to finish just a single painting, and her art would sell for up to $40,000 towards the end of her life. However, all the money that she made from art, she put back into her animal sanctuary in Positano for caring for the animals, and she stated in numerous interviews that she never wished to really own any possessions in her life. She didn't have a house, she didn't have many things, so her art would sell for a lot of money, but considering how long it took her to create a single piece of art, it wasn't that she was a multi-millionaire, she was really dedicating herself to the animals back in her home in Italy. Interviews about her art, Vali has said some very interesting things about her art process and also what her art means to her. In a certain interview, she described her art as spirit drawings, and she said, "You can't know your own spirit, but you can feel it." And she also mentioned that that's actually a good thing. When you look at her art, a lot of images include portraits of her, portraits of her fox, which she named Foxy, and this animal would be a very special and long-term companion to her. We can see that her artwork has a lot of personal significance to her. And she also said in other interviews that she often begins a piece of art when she's feeling particularly down, and then she will work through the art as a way of lifting herself out of that. Although she also said that she's not interested in happiness, and that only chasing happiness is not really seeing the richness that life has to offer. I think this can be seen in her artwork because there are a lot of dark themes in her art, but it doesn't have a depressing feel to it, it has an uplifting feel to it, almost as if she has embraced the sorrow in the world and seen the beauty in that and just worked with that instead of shying away from it. And I think this quality about her, her ability to look at difficult things, to embrace them and to not be afraid of them, really ties in with this energy of the full moon in Scorpio and with the archetype of the dark goddess. So whether or not Vali used her artwork as a spiritual practice in itself or any form of ritual, we can see from what she said and from what the art looks like that the art certainly had a spiritual significance to her, and certainly to the people who view her art now. I'd like to just share a few tarot cards that I think really exemplify her energy. And just take them out. This is the tarot by Nora Uska. I cannot be sure if I pronounced her name right, but I will also link that. I think the bright colors of this deck, coupled with the dark imagery, also really lends itself to the aesthetics and spirituality of Vali. First, we have here the Queen of Wands. This fiery card, I think, really exemplifies Vali's fearlessness, her motivation, her passion, and her drive. Then, this card, Strength, because in the Strength card, in this deck and in most decks, we can see a woman with an animal, and they are not fighting each other, they are sitting very comfortably, and showing that true strength is compassion really, to me, fits with Vali's life, and also speaks to her affinity with animals. And finally, also quite pertinent for the full moon, is the major arcana card, the Moon. The idea of the subconscious, of deep wisdom, really again lends itself to the life of Vali Myers, and I believe that this card is a great card to think about, not only in relation to her life, but also in relation to the full moon in Scorpio on Thursday. And I'll just put these away. I also wanted to mention Vali's notebooks. She kept notebooks or diaries which feature beautiful photos of herself and also writings about her life and what she was going through at the time. She has a very unique handwriting style, and these diary pages are absolutely beautiful. As well as being a very accomplished fine artist, Vali also tattooed, and especially back in the 60s and 70s, that was very rare. She tattooed herself, her face, and in an interview she described for a whole year she would paint what she called a moustache on her face every night before she did her paintings, in this shape, and then she decided to tattoo it on herself. She also tattooed other beautiful looking designs on her face, as well as tattoos on her hands and feet. Back then, decades ago, this would have been such a bold move. She also tattooed Gianni, and I've seen a video of her tattooing his arm. She would use the hand poke tattoo method, and as that's something that's very important to me as well, I find it very inspiring. You can see in her tattoo designs, they mix a slight almost indigenous element with the flowing lines of her own work. I recall in an interview she mentioned that one of her parents had a New Zealand heritage, and she was inspired by the Maori people of New Zealand, who would have very large and beautiful tattoos. Not only was she well known for her amazing tattoos, her style is also very iconic, and you can see that it had an influence on fashion designers and others who went on to be considered style icons in their own right. She wore brightly coloured clothing, a lot of layers, often Central Asian jewellery or gold, silver jewellery. She had her iconic dark eyes and bright red hair. So I think we can also see that whilst her art is in her paintings, her tattoos, and in her dancing, it was also in her personal style as a real exemplification of her free-spirited and unique approach to life. Although compared to a lot of artists who are famous from her time, there isn't so much media around about her, there are still some amazing resources out there if you're interested in learning more. On YouTube, there are quite a few interviews with her over the years, and when she passed away, she donated all of her art to the people of Victoria, which is the state where the city of Melbourne is in Australia. The non-profit organisation, the Vali Myers Arts Gallery Trust, has a great Facebook page where you can find images of her and her work as well as information, and some people have also been sharing personal stories on the page of their own experiences with Vali. Vali also starred in the 1965 film about her called The Witch of Positano by Sheldon and Diane Watchlin, which is an amazing vintage film, and a book called Night Flower, The Life and Art of Vali Myers by Outre Press can be found on their website, which I can also link. They're a Melbourne-based publishing company, and they also sell quite a wide range of prints of her work. Both when she was alive and after she's passed away, Vali Myers has inspired a whole host of playwrights, writers, musicians and others with her art and her zest for life. And she's also inspired me a lot, both in my art and in my spirituality. I'd like to share this portrait I did based off a photo of her. I think I did the portrait a few, maybe 2 years ago in one of my sketchbooks. Just find it. Here, this is taken from a photograph of her with a frog, and you can see, or toad perhaps, you can see her beautiful tattoos, and also I tried to capture something of her deep spirit with this simple pencil drawing. In many interviews, Vali spoke about how she really liked the unknown and she was interested in what is not known, and that also really fits in with the archetype of the dark goddess. I think her fearlessness, her ability to seek out new situations and just pursue her dreams without fear of judgment really exemplifies what we can learn from the dark goddess and also from the full moon in Scorpio. Vali was an amazing artist in so many mediums. She travelled the world and she inspired all around her. So I hope you'll take some inspiration from this unique artist, and I hope you will enjoy seeing her artwork and see what creativity this sparks within you. I also hope you'll have a wonderful full moon in Scorpio this Thursday, and please let me know if you have any rituals or anything planned in the comments. I'd love to hear about that. Also, if there are any artists that really inspire you, both artistically and spiritually, I would love to hear about them. Thank you very much for watching my video. Let me know if there's anything that you're interested in seeing from me. For example, more videos about my own art or about artists that inspire me, tarot and other topics. Please let me know. I hope to see you again, and please subscribe if you're interested. Thank you. Bye.